So my question here is related to diabetes. How do you maintain this highs and lows when you're into this ballroom or this dancing stuff?
Well, sometimes it's a bit hit and miss sometimes, and I've tried several different approaches. Before I was on the pump, my lessons were in the evening, so it would be before I'd get to go home, after I finished work, before I'd get to go home for dinner. So before I'd start, I would drink like half a bottle of a sports energy drink, which it's not a full sugar one, it's like a half sugar one. It's like balancing electrolytes and everything. But that doesn't really work for me on the pump. So when I'm pumping and dancing, I tend to take down my basal a certain amount. That's if I'm in a lesson, and then I just in between each sort of section, I'll stop and I'll check, and I'll take it up or down and a little bit. But when I'm doing competitions, there's no regular time to sit down, and there's no like lunch break or anything like that. It just goes on all day, and you can be called on and off the floor to dance. And I actually found, and it isn't the way I would eat any other way, but I actually found for me that sort of grazing small and regular was actually the best way for me to do things, because it just stopped me from getting too high or too low. And I felt it was, especially when you're running around so much from room to room or whatever, is to try and keep it a little bit on the higher side than I would be comfortable with normally, because it's very heightened emotionally as well. That will bring you down because of the adrenaline will burn off a lot of sugar. So it's best to just stay a little bit higher than you would normally, and then I can, as soon as I get on the coach to go home, I can start bringing it back down again and get bang under at the end of the day. But I mean, I think it's a brilliant way of burning a lot of calories and just having a really good time as well. It's such a good workout that and a lot of people I think underestimate how energetic it is, because you're so focused on what you're doing, you don't realise that by 40 minutes in there you're absolutely dripping with sweat because you've not noticed because you've been having such a good time.
Exactly.
And it's not something that people think of when they think of, oh, I've got to start exercising, I'll go down the gym or I'll go running, and you should really give it a second thought.
Yeah, that's a good workout, I think, and it drenches you out at the end of 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my next question is, I know there is a lot of presence of diabetic online community here in US, but I don't think that's the way in United Kingdom. But how did you get hold of this DOC and your experiences with the DOC?
Well, I think you're right, there is not as much going on in the UK, and that makes me really sad actually. I mean, there are support networks out there, and there's a brilliant one. I think my friend Shelley runs a brilliant one called Circle D, which is for 18 to 30s, and like meetups and groups, and she has a website and everything like that. But there isn't as much going on in the UK, and I can't even remember what it was I was looking for, to be honest with you. But I put something into Google, and I ended up with finding Six Until Me, which I think is a way a lot of people end up finding the DOCs through Kerry's blog. And then I just started, I felt clicking on links from there, and I was like, wow, I'm actually not on my own. There are other people out there who are want to not let this disease beat them. And I ended up I spent hours and hours just clicking links and reading. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this as well. I don't think anyone will ever read it. I don't think anyone will ever care what I've got to say, because who am I? Let's be honest. So I started my blog in June 2009. And to be honest, I didn't expect anyone to ever read it. But then I found people were reading it. And that was really surprising. But it wasn't really until I joined Twitter when I found, okay, not only do people write blogs, people are there 24/7, every day, all the time, and it's fantastic.
Exactly.
That at pretty much any time of the day you can go on and you can find somebody who knows exactly where you're coming from and knows exactly what you're talking about. You don't have to explain things over and over and over and over again because they're on the same page as you. And I think there are some of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life, full stop, in this community that we have. And I just love that it's so open, that anybody can join in, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world, who you are, what you look like, what type of diabetes you have, what your background is, that there's somebody out there who's going to understand exactly the person that you are.
Where you're coming from, yes.
Yeah.
So what is the biggest adjustment you made with this type 1?
Oh gosh, I think for me, when I was diagnosed, it made me sit up and just think about everything really, about the person that I was, how I lived my life, how I thought about what I wanted out of life, because I went, okay, I've not really been dealt a very fair hand here, but so have so many people. I've got things working against them, and the only way that's going to defeat you is if you let it. And I was not going to let some pesky disease knock it. I looked it up, and I should never have done it, but I'm glad that I did. The average lifespan of a type 1 diabetic, and it was like, oh, it takes 10 to 15 years off your life, and I'm like, no, it isn't. It's not going to do that with me, because I'm not going to let it. I'm not going to let something that came into my life without invitation rule the way I live my life. And it just made me think that if I'm going to carry on and do all the things that I want to do, just with this in consideration, then I'm going to have to think about exercising better and eating better. And sometimes you have to be a little bit selfish about putting yourself and your health further ahead in your list of priorities than you might have done before. And sometimes that doesn't feel good to do that, because you feel like you might be being selfish, but in the long run you're not. Mm-hmm. You're doing what you need to do to carry on and do all the things that you've ever wanted to do. And I've got my dreams and my ambitions and my goals, and I plan to achieve them.
Exactly.
And
you don't want diabetes to rule you in any way.
No, absolutely not.
So your final question here is some of the things you learned the hard way in your 2 years of T1 life.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I would have to say is that everybody's got their own opinion is one thing, and that you might not agree with what people have to say, but you certainly have to respect it and respect them, because I've come across people with all sorts of different views and things that I don't agree on, and I would never do that way or this way or that way, but if it works for them, then that's fine. And they're no better or worse of a person than me, and I'm no better or worse of a person than them, just because I think differently. I've learnt the importance of being organised, because when I'm not organised, and if I start letting my attention slip off things, then the impact is going to be on me, mm-hmm. and I'm going to regret it, because there's been times when I've thought, oh, I've forgotten to put a prescription in, and then I'm stuck in a situation where I've not got the things that I need, and it would have only taken me, like 30 seconds with the thought to have done the thing in the first place. For instance, I've just been distracted by something else, picked up the wrong insulin, injected the wrong insulin, and then I've spent 3 hours trying to get my blood sugar back up because I'd injected my bolus insulin rather than my basal, and 3 times as much as I would for a normal meal. And mm-hmm. It's just keeping on top of things and not letting the simple things, not becoming complacent about them.
Exactly.
I think is the most important thing I've ever learned. So
thank you, Becky, for being on the show and sharing your 2 years of T1 life, and also I wish you all the best in the near future.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
You have a nice day. Take care.
You too.